so when it goes badly, you think, this is it. This is how I'm defining myself. And I've failed. And it's not like anything else, because it's like you personally, they didn't like you, even though there are other factors, they're like, age group or the venue or the sound was terrible or whatever. You still take it very personally. If you're an actor and you're playing a character and the play is not popular or gets a bad review or whatever, you can distance yourself from it. You say, I'm an actor. With this, you're just you. So they've rejected you personally.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Today's guest is unbelievably funny and reflective. Akmal is so easy and fun to talk to. He has great insights and is a top-tier conversationalist. One of the many things I loved about this chat is how Akmal embraces his authenticity and love of comedy. He gives a short story of how he changed his name to Peter, then back to Akmal, which was really insightful and beautiful to hear. This man has a wealth of stories. I was so excited for this chat. I grew up watching Akmal on the telly and it was an absolute thrill. I hope you love it as much as I did. Okay, let's get into it. Akmal Saleh is a stand-up comedian, actor, voiceover artist, author, and writer. He's done it all. Appeared in movies, sketch, TV appearances, radio, talk show host, and is a published author. Akmal is one of Australia's most respected, successful, and accomplished comics. A lightning quick and a master of unscripted comedy gold. He's currently touring around Australia and soon the Melbourne Comedy Festival. Check out his shows before they sell out. Links are in the episode notes. He's also been seen on some of Australia's greatest shows, such as Thank God You're Here, Have You Been Paying Attention, Just for Laughs, the Melbourne International Comedy Festival Gala, Rove, Spicks and Specks, Good News Week, and he was even a script consultant for Superwog. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about his love of comedy, opening for strippers, his doco, bad gigs, regrets and radio, cab driver to stand-up, perspective, dodgy tax accountants, learnings from I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, Almost Being Sued, Marty Sheargold, Comedy Safety Nets, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out at 3:30 Melbourne, Australian time, with the full video of the podcast to be released the following day. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's get into it. I believe early on in your career, you were escorted from a wedding for accidentally offending the bridal party or the bridal party's family. Can you tell me about that if you remember it?
Oh, no. Well, there's been a few of those, but the worst one was this. These guys came up to me after the Comedy Store. I used to do the Comedy Store a lot. And these young guys came up and said, oh, man, you'd be great for my mum and dad's 60th anniversary, right? Have you heard this story?
I'm not sure. I'm excited.
Oh man, right. So, and I was young and I was really keen. I would do everything. These private gigs are really scary, but I thought, oh, that sounds great. And they gave me more money than I ever earned. Right? There's this. They were a Jewish family, very well to do, in a place called. Was it like near Vaucluse in Sydney? Are you from Sydney?
Melbourne.
No, anyway, it's really, really rich, wealthy area. And I get to the house and it's like a 3-story built like mansion.
Yep.
They had their own cook. they had a chef on the premises. I don't know if he was there permanently, but he was there cooking for the guests, and the guests were really old, like in their 60s and 70s, and old Jewish couple. And I thought, anyway, they got me at this stage that was on wheels. It was on wheels, like those makeshift stages, right? Anyway, I get up. It was a backyard. The backyard was like an acre, and it had a waterfall going into the swimming pool. And I thought, oh man, this better go well. I was confident. I thought, this is going to go okay, But my first line was what sort of destroyed it for me. I said, listen, everyone, you're all Jews. I'm an Arab. We're all circumcised here, so let's have no hostility. And it went downhill from there.
Really? That's a very good.
I thought it was okay, I thought it was a good, warm-up crowd, but they just did not like me at all. And I think now looking back, I think it was their children's way of getting back at them by hiring me, because they obviously had problems with Arabs.
Wow.
And from that point on, they just decided they hate me, and nothing was happening, and they started talking, and I'm yelling, because I didn't have much experience. So I thought, I'll talk louder and I'll get their attention. That was just annoying them more. And then the two guys that booked me, about 10 minutes into the act, came and started wheeling me off, just pushing the stage. And then everyone applauded. They go, yay! As I was just moving. I was moving. It was a moving stage. And that was very humiliating, but I got paid, which is the important thing.
I'm glad
I got paid, and that was a terrible night. Look, weddings generally are not a good idea for any comedians watching. Weddings are bad because they're not there for you. You're not the focus, and unless you're talking about the bride and groom the whole set. And if you don't know them, then what can you can only make fun of the way they dressed or whatever, or the way they talk or their background. But other than that, you're screwed. They're not interested.
It's a lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose. Yes, that's right. I've had a few bad ones, so I don't do weddings ever, no matter what, because they just, that's death. That's death. Weddings equals death for sure.
Is that the worst place to do comedy?
It's the worst environment because it's such a wrong environment. People don't realize how fragile this business is. It's so, if it's not in the right environment, get a guy to play guitar, or get a juggler, or one of the trend now is they're getting these Brazilian drummers, and whatever they do, these that Brazilian martial art. For some reason, I don't know why, like Egyptians have weddings and they get the Brazilian martial artist. Why? There's no answer to that. It's just they want to be included because that's what everyone else is doing. It's much better than a comedian.
At my bar mitzvah, I don't know why my parents did it. They got a magician, and the magician one came like an hour late, and he reeked, and he was just smoking in between the
just like crusty.
And we're all like 13, and we don't know many people that smoke. We're like, what's that smell? And he's like, it's kind of like Krusty the Crown, like he smokes, does like a shitty toys. I enjoy it, buddy. And then he just left also early. And I was like, who is this guy?
Who is this guy? He wasn't even. We didn't book him. He was a vagrant, just a homeless guy.
There's been also at those functions, I've seen a lot of like African, my parents are South African, but it wasn't at mine, like African drumming and stuff. And I'm like, that's also so random. But comedy,
it's very random.
Comedy at a wedding would be the worst. Also, I'm offended that the Jewish people didn't like that joke. My mates would have killed. That would have been a great opener.
Yeah. I had a lot of material, but everything I said they found very offensive. I think it was an age thing because I was like in my 20s and these people were older, and I got off on the wrong foot.
I feel like I've got two stories. Oh, not one story. Have you seen Jim Jeffries' special where he does that gig at the billionaire James Packer's house? And it's just like no one liked him, and the whole set is just about how horrible it went.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the people that booked you, and wouldn't the families know what they've got? Or they're just like, it's entertainment and didn't think? Like,
I think people are just generally becoming dumber. People are getting more stupid, and they don't understand why wasn't he funny? He was funny in the theater with 2,000 people of his fans, but he wasn't funny in our kitchen when he was performing. He just didn't. I don't know. It's just maybe he wasn't into it or something. They don't get it,
The best place for comedy. And you would have seen so many different venues and environments that haven't like been the best. Like I can almost imagine like Macca's like at the back. You've done places like that because that's the journey of a stand-up. Are there any that spring to mind where you're just like, how could you possibly think you could do comedy here? Like,
look, when I was very young, I was doing the Comedy Store. I was, you got paid like $60, which was really good considering, like $60 for a 15-minute spot. This is back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And these guys offered me to tour Australia, all expenses paid, with male strippers. These American male, they were Canadian, sorry, they were Canadian male strippers. They were like the hottest thing, and they're really hot dancers. And these guys were chiseled gods, right?
I'm jealous.
And for some reason they got me as well. And I thought this would be a great idea. I'm touring the country, man. I'm on tour. I couldn't say no, right? But I didn't realize it was completely out of context, right? So they get venues, and they were a big sort of profile strippers. Some of them have danced with Michael Jackson and all this.
Oh wow!
But I was the front guy. I opened the show, right? Because they had a rule back in the 90s where if an international act came to perform, they had to have a local act. It was like an actors' equity thing. And for some reason, they decided to get me, right?
Did you ever ask why they got you?
Oh, no, I just thought, they obviously love comedy, there's lots of random. I think it was the same manager, the same manager who brought him out was also doing comedy or something. And so every night there'd be like 500, 600, 700 women, because only women were allowed in. And the lights would go down, and these women would get really excited and go, woo! And then they said, please welcome Akmal. And I'd come on, and I'm a little guy I used to have a pod belly, and I used to have curly hair, but I started to go bald in the middle there. So I looked like an Egyptian koala, and you could just sense the disappointment as soon as I got on stage. Like, when you introduce someone, you're expecting applause.
Yep.
Every night there'd be like this collective, oh!
Everyone put their bras back on.
And I'd have to get on and just struggle through it every night until I was at a place called Wangaratta in Victoria.
Yeah.
And there was a club there, and this night was, they kept delaying the show because the women were just getting drunker and drunker, and it was quite a violent place back then. So they had no the glass wasn't allowed, so there's no glasses. They had these plastic cups.
Sounds classy.
Right? Plastic cups, because people would glass each other when they got pissed. And so this place was packed, right? and I'd come on, and I did like 10 shows previously, and I got away with it. I just got away with it, just got my set. It was only a 10-minute set. And I got on at this place in Wangaratta, and within 30 seconds, the entire audience started yelling out, boring, boring, boring. And I'm going, no, shut up, listen. No, boring. Show us your cock. And which was actually quite flattering, because they wanted to see my cock instead of the other guys. They haven't seen the other guys yet. He goes, well, he must be the warm-up act. And then I was just, it was one of those stages where it was like a circular stage, and they're all around you, there's like theater in the round kind of thing. And I was within a minute on stage, and I get showered with these plastic cups. They were like half-filled beer, and I'm just showered with it, and I'm going, it was just the most humiliating thing. And then I got off stage. I was humiliated. I was just so hurt, because it was all I wanted to do,
Yeah.
And I have no other skills. And I went backstage. Backstage was like a beer garden, and there was this big pot. It was a really expensive-looking pot, and I was so angry, I kicked it, and the thing smashed. It just smashed. So I thought, oh, this night couldn't get any worse. I just went and sat in the men's toilets at the urinal with my head like this, going, oh, I can't, this is it. I cannot do this anymore. And then I hear outside again, who the fuck broke this pot plant? Who broke this pot plant? And this girl, and all I can hear it, I can't see it. And this girl goes, oh, obviously one of the girls broke this pot plant. Because I used to have a break before me. Like I'd do the show and then they'd have a break after me, sorry. They'd have a break and then the show would begin. So I was like the obligation of then just get him out of the, not even a warm up. It's just like, we legally have to do this. So yeah, get him on. And then I hear this, okay, ladies, one of you girls broke a very expensive pot plant and the show's not starting till you own up. I'm going, oh God. It was one of the worst nights. That was so. This is an example of being smart enough not to do any gig. I mean, it was an experience because I experienced that, and I know how painful that could be. No, after that, there was no such thing as a bad gig because it was all relative to that one.
Oh, really? So that's pretty cool. You're young, you're eager. You have, you gave a few examples, and you still moved forward. Feel like it made you super resilient. So if gigs ever go bad, do you go back to that one and go, it wasn't as bad as that one?
It wasn't as bad as that one. I've had a few. I mean, I could probably write a book about.
You already have a book, so get a second one out.
No, I'll get a book about bad gigs, just bad. If you ask comedians, tell us about your best night ever, they would struggle. They would struggle because I don't know. Like, yeah, I've had some great nights, but you don't remember them. They don't stay in your memory like the bad ones. It's only the ones where you get hurt where you remember, because the good ones are meant to go well. Yeah. So you just go, oh my God, it's just, I've had some shocking nights because you go home and the pain continues. And you go to bed and you're looking up at the ceiling and you think, I've really wasted my life here. I should have studied harder at school like my mum's told me to. Yeah. I wouldn't have had to do the Windsor Hotel where we thought we were going to get bashed by bikers. And we've had some, oh man, yeah.
I think it's really important you bring this up because you've been probably the biggest name in Australian comedy for like 30 years. You've been doing comedy for that long. And it's important. People just think you get up on stage and then after a year or two, you do all these gigs and, you can tour for life. But it's the painful gigs. And that's just a few. You would have had 100 more. I find it so empowering when I hear someone like you say that you still move forward, that you still did it. You didn't give up. Maybe there were times where you didn't want to do it, but you still moved forward. And
yeah. I didn't have a choice, really. I have no other skills. It was either this or go to prison. So this was, if I had other skills, I might have taken those. But, I wanted to do it so badly that no matter how bad the night was, I always wanted to, I was obsessed by it. And when you're young, you talk to any young comedians, they have the same sort of, it's the same journey. They can't think about anything else. And so when it goes badly, you think, this is it. This is how I'm defining myself. And I failed. And it's not like anything else because it's like you personally, they didn't like you, even though there are other factors, they're like, age group or the venue or the sound was terrible or whatever. You still take it very personally. If you're an actor and you're playing a character and the play is not popular or gets a bad review or whatever, you can distance yourself from it. You say, I'm an actor. With this, you're just you. So they've rejected you personally, and most comedians are desperately wanting love. That's why they do it. It's that desperate, look at me, aren't I great? And if you have a bad night, people are saying, no, you're not great. You're horrible. Go do something you're good at. And it really hurts. It's very painful.
So what have you done? Because, as we said, there's been so many gigs. All comedians have had hundreds of these, maybe like even thousands over the journey. Have you had any techniques to build yourself back up or help with your confidence or just,
Look, it's just having perspective. When you're young and you have a bad night, you think this is it. I'm never going to do well again. Or you start to question your abilities. Or you got you got strong material, you got some sort of sus material that carries you through to the next strong bit. But when you have a bad night, it all, the weaknesses are so highlighted, right?
Yeah.
So all the flaws in your act are magnified. And you start thinking, I'm not really good at this. I can't do this anymore. I have to find something else, but I don't want to do anything else. So as you get older and you realize it's not necessarily you. Like when you have a bad night, it's not always your fault. Sometimes it is the audience fault. They're too drunk, or they put you on too late, or there's a big gap between you and them, like physically.
Or
Like these,
strippers
when you do these
after you.
corporate gigs. Yeah, well, yeah, you do these corporate gigs that pay really well, but they're so scary because you're sometimes the setup is not conducive for comedy. They put you on between entrees and mains. And you're just a secondary thought, like you're an afterthought. So sometimes it's not your fault. So as you get more experienced, you realize, okay, this was a bad one, but let's have a look. And you also realize if you don't have these bad nights, you don't evolve, you don't get better, you don't improve. It's these bad nights that strengthen your material. It highlights your weak bits that you sort of tend to, okay, I'm going to drop that because that didn't work, even though it was a tough night. I thought that would work, but it only works on really, really good nights, which means I'm cheating. I have to find ways of strengthening that. It's like it's kind of like boxing. I don't know if you're a boxing fan. It's that you learn, you get hurt, and you go, okay, now I have to block that. I have to, my reflexes blocks that, so I can find another way in. Or if someone yells something out and you disintegrate when you're young. If someone yells something out and destroys your bit, you find ways of coming back. You find ways. So I'll tell you something. There's a big difference between Sydney comedians and Melbourne comedians, right? So yeah, because Melbourne comedy originated in the theatres and in proper comedy clubs and like uni reviews, things like that, and the audiences were a bit more sophisticated. In Sydney, there was just pubs. It was just pubs, They turn off when you go up to the manager and say, mate, can you turn off the Keno machine while I'm performing? And they go, nah, mate, we're not going to turn off the Keno machine for you. Geez, you must be good. And so you find the people at my age anyway, my generation who have started in Sydney,
Yep.
tend to be more resilient. They tend to, because they've had tougher fights, so they're a bit stronger and they can deal with hecklers more. They can deal with rougher environments more, I think. Where Melbourne comedians have the luxury of telling long-winded stories and which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just they've evolved differently.
It's very interesting. Besides hating Melbourne comedians, and I fully get that.
Yeah.
What separates, and in all fields as well, but especially comedy, is the resilience, as you say. That there are a lot of comedians where after a few bumps, no judgments, or they're not doing as well, they can give up. But the ones, like there's very few people in the Australian comedy landscape who've been doing it at your level and for as long as possible. And it's actually really awesome to hear that you're like almost grateful for these bad gigs because it set you up for where you are now. That's a nice mindset. You wouldn't have thought that at the time.
You wouldn't have thought that at the time. It still hurts. It still hurts today when you have a bad night, but you got more perspective. You're a bit more philosophical about it, and you say, okay, that was just one of many nights to come. And I've done well previously, and that this was, and you look at it in sort of in context, and you say, okay, so was it all my fault? Was it there were things that were out of my hands? But you're right. You become tougher. You become stronger.
Yeah, even expanding on what you said about environments and stuff, because people who might not understand like how a room should be, like corporate gigs, for example. I used to be an accountant. If there was let's say you there, I'm in an environment where, everyone's like got a facade or a mask and they don't want to necessarily laugh at something else because they're worried of how they will be perceived, or they want to talk to someone, or they want to suck up to the boss. And I know corporate gigs are the most like luxurious of them all, but there's like no factor that can be, and also you don't know the environment. Like there's so many factors to suit comedy to make it be good. and often they're not in your favor as well. So
That's right. Well, you're not a priority. You're a tax write-off. That's what you are, right? So they go, yeah, just get he'll do. They don't care. And a lot of times that you're on really late, and there's been like usually it's an awards ceremony, right? So 3/4 of the audience didn't get an award. So they're upset they didn't get an award, and the people who did get an award, the people who didn't get an award feel that it wasn't, fair, and so there's all this tension. And I have to come and go, hey, what's going on? What's with cats these days? Hey, they could not care less.
I'm glad that you can see it all as kind of a joke while trying to expand and grow and be the best that you can be. I'm also really curious because of you've spoken about resilience, and you're on the radio. And there are a few examples, and I'm on your side on this. And you made a joke about McDonald's, which was hilarious. And then you made a joke about suicide from memory that was also funny. And then the resilience, because people are anyway. We'll give context to it, but I'd love to know how you kind of dealt with being on the radio.
Well, look, these days it's a lot tougher than when I was on radio. I think I'd probably be sacked, like Marty Sheargold was. Have you heard about Marty Sheargold?
Yeah.
Now, I just am astounded that even his former colleagues are attacking him.
Oh, really?
And you think,
and for him?
This woman who was on, attacking him, people who were on with him, who, what's her name?
So
I don't know. Have a look. Yeah, and so people were more tolerant when I was on the radio. I think I did a McDonald's joke, not realizing look, the thing is about radio, for example, is that what people don't understand about Marty Sheargold is he has to do 15 hours a week of unscripted, original, fresh comedy to compete with all the other stations, right? They pay him an enormous amount of money for that. It comes with a lot of pressure. And so the other thing is you're trying to make your colleagues laugh. You're not really playing to the listening audience. You want to get that natural laugh in the studio. And so they know your humor. They know your rhythms. It's very hard, to make them laugh. In order to make them laugh, you have to push it that little bit more. You have to say something that, it's the same thing if in private you would probably say it and not think about it. But sometimes you forget that you're talking to a million people as well. And so, like when he was trying to be funny, so he's going to say the thing that is not meant to be said, right? He said, give me men's sport instead, so they can laugh and get that natural reaction, because there's nothing worse than that fake laughter that radio often does. There you go. You just did it then. No, he didn't. That wasn't you. No, but so I really felt for Marty. I know, I was like there. I was at, I didn't realize that the station was sponsored by McDonald's. And my Cal Wilson, who sadly passed away, she was an amazing person. And she said, what did you do on the weekend? And I said, I did a function. I worked at a charity thing for the Ronald McDonald House. And she said, what's that? I said, it's a charity for sick children, which I find ironic because I'm pretty sure that's how those children got sick in the first place. I said that and the building exploded. Everybody wanted to talk to me. How could you say that? I had to write a letter of apology to McDonald's. I had no choice, like, there's actually some truth in that, but it doesn't matter.
I'm first of all, with me, and I might be a bad example, you can make any joke at my expense. I don't care, they're jokes. So with Marty Sheargold, for example, and just adding to what you said, you're not allowed dead airtime. You say what comes to your mind. You can't think. And I did improv, and I'm not comparing basic improv classes to being on radio, but you say, and I've said some questionable things on improv because you bang, bang, bang. You have to say the first thing. It's a shame that, society will attack someone. And also, Marty Sheargold is a specific type of humor. You know what you're getting with Marty. Like, how was it outrageous? Like, have you not been listening to the show and know what he's about? Like,
that's what he's about. But I'll tell you something else that I find really interesting is that, you're probably too young to remember this. You remember Sir Les Patterson? It was like Barry Humphries.
Yeah.
Now check him out. Barry Humphries did a character. He did Dame Edna Everage which was the
Oh, Dame
woman with
Edna.
the
Yeah,
big
yeah, 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 yeah.
glasses, right? But he did another character, which was called Sir Les Patterson, and he was meant to be a politician. And he was like super sexist and super, but nobody was offended because they gave him that leeway of, oh, he's an actor, he's being ironic,
Yeah.
it's irony, okay. So that privilege is not given to comedians for some reason. For some reason, when Marty Sheargold said, "I hate women's sport," they don't give him the idea that he's being ironic or he's trying to be funny on the spur of the moment. He's trying to make his friends laugh by saying something that is not considered correct. They don't give him that leeway. You don't get that leverage that say Les Patterson said. If you go watch his stuff, it's really highly offensive, but it's because it's in character. It's irony, you know, and I find that really weird, you know. Just they don't make that distinction.
I know it's bizarre, and also the whole thing. I'm not just about Marty Sheargold, like not to get so offended so easily.
Yeah, it's
Intention
becoming
is important.
I think it's more about control. I don't think people genuinely got offended. They just jump on the bandwagon. It's like schoolboy bullying, sort of schoolyard tactics, where one kid's getting bullied, so everyone joins in and bullies that kid because that's the thing to do.
Do you think it will change?
I hope so. I think it's pretty extreme right now. I think it will swing back. I mean, look at how Trump got in. Trump got in because of all the wokeness thing was extreme. It was starting to become extreme. So, unfortunately, I'm not a fan of Trump, but I think it was a reaction to that. You know, that inflexibility, and people went, "Fuck this! I'll vote for this crazy guy instead." Because he's giving me freedom of speech or whatever, and you know, could be now you have to, you know, deal with the consequences of this madman.
Yeah, we won't get into the political side, but
No, we won't. But I'm just saying that it was him getting in. It was a result of that, all that political correctness. Inflexibility will cause problems like that. If people have become inflexible, there's got to be a reaction to that at some point.
I agree. Whenever we do one extreme, we balance it out with another extreme.
That's
and
right.
Tying
That's
up
right.
what we've said, we want the balance. It doesn't need to be all eyes. Let's attack this person. It doesn't get us anywhere. And we're very
Exactly.
divided already. Well, I don't think we're as divided as people think, but I'm all about uniting and being like, yeah, I might not agree with you, but I don't need to throw you under the bus and attack you and try and cancel you and get rid of you. That's not how we all thrive together in the next
Well, it doesn't
station.
do any good. Canceling someone, it just drives them underground. You know, it just they become more popular in some ways. You know, do you remember a comedian called Andrew Dice Clay? Check him out. Like classic Andrew Dice Clay. He was about as offensive as you can get, right? And he was like racist, misogynist, everything you can imagine to the extreme, right? And he was so shocking that he became really popular. He was selling out Madison Square Garden,
Whoa.
right, every night. That's 22,000 people a night, right? And no comedian had done that for a long time, and people were scared. They're going, "This guy's dangerous. This guy's a Nazi, whatever." And within 4 years, he disappeared, completely disappeared, because people just got bored. You know, but had he been cancelled, he would have been a hero, because people go, "Oh, that's the guy that's cancelled. You know, let's check him out." But he just disappeared. Andrew Dice Clay. I mean, his stuff is so outrageously offensive that you laugh at first, and then the second time you watch it, you go, "Oh, this guy's just hateful."
Oh, yeah. So material like that won't work for the long term as well. And that's
It
also
won't
really
work in the long
interesting.
term, but my point is, I guess, banning someone or canceling someone doesn't do any good. It actually makes
Create
them more
martyrs and
powerful.
heroes. I want to tie up the point because I got 1,000 questions from the radio side. So the McDonald's joke, we're on the same page. McDonald's is not great food. I don't even know if you can call it food. I don't know if you looked into the studies with the food. But anyway,
Yeah.
and then you have to to apologize. What's that like? Because you know you didn't mean that, but at the same time, like it's pretty accurate. How do you like mentally deal with that?
Well, the way they get you, I was working for Nova, and I didn't realize how you just, you know, when you're in it, you don't realize the magnitude of how it's quite a powerful position to be talking.
Yeah,
We
a
were
lot
the
of people
second
listening to you.
highest rating show nationwide. And then they got me in and said, look, your contract says, and there's a contract, like it was like 50-page contract or something. So there's something there that says we can sack you, or we can sue you, like McDonald's can sue you, for basically, because and they're not responsible. Like Nova will not back you if McDonald's sack you, or sue you, right?
Yeah.
And then I got really scared, so I had to write a letter of apology, and they had to go through it, and I had to sign it, and yeah. So money, when money is involved, things get serious.
I know, and how scary, I don't want you to like relive it, but was it a really stressful period? Like what helped you in that moment? Because that is pretty scary. These giants are coming at you.
Look, I didn't even, the funny thing is, because like this is what I go back to, I really feel for Marty Sheargold, because I said it and I didn't even remember, like when they took me in and they say, come into the office, program director, and said, you said this. I thought, what? I said, no, I didn't. And they just play it back and they go, oh yeah, I did say that. Yeah, I said it. and so it's stressful. But do you get through it? Because the next day you have to do another show with different material and different guests, and you let it go and think about it, and because if you let it consume you, you're not going to do the next show is going to be bad, and there's a lot of pressure to do well and to get laughs and to be funny and to be fresh every day, and if you focus on that, then you just pull back a little bit. So you got to be more careful about what you're saying. So you're not as free as you could be.
Wouldn't that scar
It limits
you a
you.
little bit? Where you
Of course.
You like hold back, and your job as a comedian is to run your mouth, and then you're
Yeah, but that's the thing, there are people, I wasn't big enough to be allowed to do that. Like Kyle Sandilands can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Because he makes 10 million for this network. I think he gets 10 million. What am I talking about? I think his fee is like his wage is that much. So he must make them a lot of money. And it's to do with the rules don't apply to you if you're making money. And that goes for everything, not just entertainment. But if you're making money for them, they will give you a lot of leeway, where I wasn't. I mean, I was doing well, but they could easily have replaced me. So you do. I mean, radio now, if you listen to radio, it all sounds the same. It's quite dull. It's quite same-ish and repetitive and bland. Yep. And this is because people are scared to say the wrong thing, and it limits you. You have to really edit yourself before you speak.
There should be
more than any other time I can remember.
There should be like a warning. We're on radio. We're not allowed dead air time. We might not always believe what we say. We're going to say things. We're going to speak out of our ass. Please don't get offended. Now enjoy the show.
Well, don't get comedians, because comedians are very sort of, there's a real impulsiveness about the comedians that I know anyway. Most of the comedians I grew up with, they're impulsive. They're more likely to say the wrong thing than not, eventually, especially because it's every day, and you're attempting humor, right? And if your humor has edge and it has it provokes, it actually gets genuine laughs rather than that mundane kind of, hey, what's going on? You hear a lot of that, right? But if you want someone who cuts through, who's genuine, who you either like or hate, but if you like, you're going to really like and be devoted to them, and you get fans, then you got to expect that eventually you're going to say the wrong thing. The wrong thing will come out. There's just too many, 15 hours a week of material. I mean, that's a lot of talking.
Exactly. Do you miss radio?
I do. Actually, I left because I was stupid. I left because I don't know why. It was a bad year for me. There was a lot of bad things happening personally, and I left, and then I regret that, because it was such a fun job. I don't know. I was living in a hotel, and I was just like, I got tired of it, and I thought, it's all right. I'll do something else. And then what I miss the most is you used to get to the station, and there'd be all these gifts for you from different people, hoping that you would talk about it on air. So it'd be like PlayStation 5. and like brand new in the box, and I'd be like almost on a daily basis. I'd get these gifts, and I used to give them away to staff, whatever, and they couldn't believe it. Go, why are you giving me this? Okay, yeah, there'll be another one tomorrow, and I miss like having access to people. Like I love The Simpsons, right? I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and I got to talk to Dan Castellaneta, who plays Homer.
Yeah.
I talked to him as Dan himself. He was great, and then I talked to him as Homer, and he was really funny as Homer. He said, Akmal, what kind of a stupid name is that? And so I was really thrilled, I got to meet the guy. I got to meet Chris Rock. I spoke to Chris Rock for a long time. I don't get starstruck very often, but I was really intimidated and Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. I spoke to them. Like I went to their hotel room and we were there for hours just talking comedy and stuff.
Oh, like through just as a friend, or was this all?
No. It was an interview for the radio. I mean, I don't know them as friends, but I got to, and we were
like
making
for hours. Like you got hours.
Oh, well, not hours. Like say, I'm exaggerating, but probably an hour.
Oh,
Probably
that's awesome.
an hour. We were there in their hotel room just because we were making them laugh.
Yeah.
Because we're making them laugh, and they actually, Will Ferrell, as he walked off, he said, "Oh, thanks for making this interview fun." I thought that's cool. I was really chuffed with that.
That's awesome.
So that's you don't get that when you're not on radio. You don't get access to the people that you admire and love, and it was just so powerful. Like you could have anything. You could say, I want a helicopter, and they'll go, we'll get you a helicopter. Never happened, but I could have.
Wow,
So I miss that.
just what you were saying before. I had Pamela Hayden, and she's the voice of Millhouse and like 10 other characters on. And just the life of working with The Simpsons is just unbelievable. What it would be the best job on the planet. You also do
Well,
voice acting.
See, it's funny because that is a brilliant show. I mean, they're writing it. I mean, especially the first, first 12 seasons, I think were genius. And I think, there's American humor, which is bullshit, and it's kind of like predictable and over the top. And lacks intelligence and subtlety and commentary, and then you get these things like The Simpsons, which is the Jewish sensibility. It's the Jewish because they're all Jewish, right? All the writers.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they're all. We'll look at the names, but it's a Jewish sort of team, and I think the Jewish humor is superior. I think it's quite
cool.
No, but I mean, throughout history, they've been brilliant. As far as originality, as far as just wit and cleverness and genuinely funny. So I haven't found anything as good as that in terms of writing.
There was a golden age of like Jewish humor. I don't know what it is anymore, like Curb, but that's still like another age. But I do screenwriting, and when just The Simpsons has just transformed, it has opened me up. I grew up on The Simpsons.
It's so clever.
Important. And the fact, you're right, it is probably the first 12 seasons. The fact that if I probably made a reference or you made a reference and we haven't seen it in years and we'd probably know exactly what happened in the episode just shows how remarkable it was as well.
The writing was just brilliant, and so it's hard to do that. It's hard to maintain that standard for a long time,
I think people left, and I forget. I asked her. I don't remember. And I also had some at the Futurama. I've pretty much had most of the Futurama cast, and there's been working with Matt Groening, who did Simpsons and the Futurama, and I think some went to Futurama. I'm not really sure, but it's just wild. And just back on the radio world springs to mind. Would you put it out there that you'd go back on the radio, or you feel?
Yes, I would. I don't know if they'd have me back, but I would love it. I think I would be a lot better at it now than I was then. I don't think I appreciated what I was given, the opportunity I was given. Because I went through a period where I was really popular. Like that's kind of gone down now. But I did Thank God You're Here.
Yeah,
I did that like 5-6 times, right? So
remember it.
that, and I'll tell you something interesting. this is how fate can play a part in your life. Because they rang me up and said, "Can you come and audition for Thank God You're Here?" And I said, "What is it? What's the show?" And they said, "Oh, it's like an improv, like theater sports." And I said, "Oh, look, I'm not very good at that." And I almost didn't go, right? And I almost went, "Nah, I'm not going to be into that." But something just said, "Just go, just go." And doing that show took me to the next level. So I was going from like doing 100-seater theaters, 120 to 900, 1,000. I was doing the Athenaeum Theatre and selling it out every night, right? So and then through that I got the radio, and so I had a very false sense of these things don't last.
Yeah.
There was very little competition as far as like ethnic comedians were concerned. I was the only brown skinned comedian when I started, and now there's millions of them. And so I thought I'll leave the radio because I'm huge, I don't need the radio. But within a few years, all these people came, and it was very much more competitive, and there was a lot more options, and no one stays up at that top for a very long time unless you're Carl Barron.
Yeah. Well, he's like a unicorn in that
He's
regard.
he's in a different dimension, different reality.
That's so interesting. So I used to watch Thank God You're Here is probably the most important Australian show that I ever watched. And I remember pretty much every episode you've been on. I haven't watched it since it was live. And I'm not just saying this, I thought you were the top. And it inspired
Oh,
me as well. It's also why I got into improv, was because of that show as well.
really? Yeah, yeah. It was a
Yeah.
brilliant idea. It was just such a simple idea, wasn't it?
It's so good. And I haven't watched
Yeah.
the latest season that much, but I don't know if you're on that one. But just when it was first on,
No, no.
so what's that like? So many eyeballs. You've got people like me watching. I don't normally watch mainstream TV
Yeah,
there. You've blown up. You said you had a false sense of like your ego was a bit high. How did you kind of deal with
yeah.
that when, inverted commas, you said your words like you went down over the years, which
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
agree with. But
But
how
the
did
thing
you?
is, it happens gradually. It doesn't happen suddenly. So gradually you go, oh, then, I'm going from 1,000-seater, selling it out for a month to, oh, it's only half full, and I go, but it doesn't happen suddenly. So it happens within a couple of years,
Yeah.
in a couple of years. So it's a slow sort of decline. But, yeah, I should have probably been a bit smarter about the big picture. If I looked at the big picture, I would have gone, okay, this is not going to last. I have to do something to sort of maintain that, either maintain that, or when it does decline, I've got another thing the radio would have been a nice sort of security thing
Yeah.
to make up for the loss of the crowd that I used to have.
So how do you see that? Because it's really interesting. I've spoken to so many people over the years. The non-linear aspect of creativity. As you said, there's ups and downs. You never know. Like I was an accountant, so you always think it's going up, 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 up. And then
Yeah.
you've got these moments where some years are lower, some years are higher. Like that's a bit of a mind fuck as well. Like that could be really scary and take away from the creativity as well.
Yeah, look, I haven't let it affect me that much because, as I say, it's a slow process. And the other thing that's really important to mention is that I love doing it. I love doing it so much. So some of the biggest highs I've had has been just doing an open mic, like just showing up at a gig and then just improvising, and it's going so well. That can sort of make you feel better than performing in front of 800 people and doing an hour sometimes, because I really love the craft of it. I love it when it goes well, regardless of how much money I've made and regardless of how full or how half full. I mean, I've had some of my best shows has been some of the quietest nights, right? Because so my focus has never been the money. It's been, I want to keep doing this. I want to do it to the best of my ability because I get such a sense of sort of satisfaction from it, like nothing else. So as long as I'm doing it and I'm doing well and I'm being creative and I'm coming up with enough new bits, and that doesn't really matter whether I'm doing big venues or not. It's much nicer to do big venues because you make more money,
Yeah.
but that's never been my priority. It's never been my focus.
That's such a rare and awesome, it's a very empowering mindset because, you know, people are always like, I'm going to do comedy, I'm going to make so much money. But, you know, 30 plus years and you still love comedy. It's not just a
Yeah.
job for you. It's a
But I
place where
love
you
it
get
even
to,
more than when I started because I'm much more confident and I know my way around, say, an hour of comedy. I know when things dip, I can find safety nets and I can pull things out from, like there's a repertoire of comebacks. So I'm much more confident and it's much more enjoyable in lots of ways, you know. It's much more, like, as I say, it's not the size of the crowd or how much money you're making. It's how well your last gig was.
oh, I've got
Yeah,
so
that's
many.
that's what I live and die for.
Yeah, okay. I love this. I've got so many questions. You mentioned the big picture aspect, but you've also described yourself as like the laziest comedian in Australia, which I don't
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
with. Can you
yeah.
explain that? So did you have a big picture or has it always been just to do stand up? And then how does it relate with your inverted commas laziness?
No, I've never been good at long-term planning. And that's not just with comedy, with everything. It's been to my detriment financially, everything. I've just kind of lived for the moment,
Yeah.
and I think I've been really lucky because I am extremely lazy. I'm extremely lazy, and I somehow just get away with it. Like every year, I go, oh shit, I haven't come up with any. I've got to come up with something, and I don't, you know, a lot of comedians work 10 times harder than I am. So somehow I'm kind of blessed, I think. And I always feel like I'm not doing enough. I always feel like I'm just getting through, just getting through. And I could do a lot better if I was more focused or I was more disciplined. I could do a lot better. But maybe not. Maybe if you were more disciplined, the stuff you come out with will be contrived and not as good. I don't know. I'm not really. I still don't know how it actually works. Really, you know.
You're a very humble guy. I'm sure you do a lot more than what you say. And
No,
also,
no, I don't. I'm really lazy.
there's
I
no
always
way.
feel
So do
guilty.
you just rock up to like, let's say a gig and you're like, I'm just going to see what comes out of my mouth? Like, do you think of bits before to,
Sometimes, I mean, every gig's different because I sort of equate it to a blind date. You know, I've never been on a blind date, but you could just imagine, you know,
yeah.
you don't know what this person's going to be like. You're either going to click with them and they're going to relate to what you're saying and you're going to relate to them, or you're going to have to work very hard to hold their attention. And so you get to some gigs and you just instinctively, because I've been doing it for so long, you know, I've experienced a lot of different energies and different vibes, different environments, different settings. So you get to a gig and sometimes you just feel so comfortable. As soon as you get on, you just throw your material out because you go, this audience is, they're getting it. I could just instinctively know I can fuck around and I don't have to. And then other nights you get on and you go, uh-oh. I don't know if you remember the Simpsons episode where Krusty does stand-up,
Yes.
right? And he goes, because he does the offensive stuff. He's like, oh, I'm losing him. Better pull out the A material.
Yeah.
And so a lot of nights you feel like that. You kind of misread the crowd and you go, oh, yeah, I'm going to ad lib. I'm going to be brilliant. They're going to, and then, better pull out the A material. Within the first 30 seconds, you can sense it and you go, and you pull it out. And sometimes, I tell you, the people, I really admire someone like Ross Noble. Ross Noble, I really admire because he doesn't care about getting the laughs every 30 seconds. You know, he's happy to explore and has enough confidence and he backs himself enough. And you go and you watch him and you go, oh, this is going on a bit long. And then eventually he finds some gold, you know. But he's got the patience and the confidence that a lot of comedians, I get scared, man. If I don't get a laugh within a minute, I better pull out the A material, you know.
Yeah.
It depends on the gig too. Like some gigs allow you, you know, it's a really casual gig. You know you're mucking around, but you don't want to be indulgent either. It's a fine line between being indulgent and just exploring and having enough confidence that you will find the laugh eventually. Just be cool. Don't rush.
I've always found it really like, you know, you've got all your jokes, you know which ones are going to work. And then you want to try new stuff because, you know, each year you might be at, and we'll talk about it soon, like the Melbourne Comedy Festival. So you
Yeah,
have to get new material. But it's
yeah,
also, as you said, really scary because it's not as refined, it's not as polished. And then there's that balance and, you know, having the confidence where you know you can kill, you know it's not necessarily going to be funny, but you know you have to do it for the longevity of your
You
career.
have to do it. You have to fail. It's that failure thing that's unfortunate, especially with comedy more than anything else. You know, you have to get on and die before you can do well, because you know there's no way in my experience, it's very, very rare that you get up and you do a bit and it's polished from the start. It happens occasionally. It's like the comedy gods are smiling on you some nights and you go bang and you go, where did that come from? But it's really rare. Most of the time you have to just walk through it and just build it up and drop some bits and finally and it takes a long time. For me personally, you know, like by the time you've got a polished hour, it's already old. It's already old. And you go, but it's taken me so long to get this hour. But you've already toured it, and it's polished because you've toured it, and you know, by the time you do the run, the last show you do, it's really, really, really good, and it's hot. But we've seen it. What else you got? We've seen that. Yeah, it's clever. Good on you. But what else you got? It's not. See, musicians don't have to deal with that constant pressure.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
can play the same thing 1,000.
See, yeah, no one goes, I've heard this.
Can you imagine if musicians had to make like the 20 songs each concert as well? Just on the
Oh,
fly?
not this again.
Yeah.
I know how this goes. Do something different. In fact, it's the opposite with music. You know, if you do new stuff, they go, "Oh, come on, do your hits. Do the hits." You never get that with comedy. You know, you say, yeah, do the hits from 1960, you know, whatever year that show you had that was really funny. Do that.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And then also from the self-talk side, you know, to summarize it, from new material when it doesn't go as well, or the bombing, or you say something, how are you with the self-talk after gigs?
I'm getting better, I think, you know, but occasionally, like when you see the comedians are very insecure, you know. That's why I mentioned Ross Noble. He seems more confident than the average comedian. But if you're there and you're not doing well, it's really tempting to go, I'll just pull that bit of gold just because I need that boost. I need that ego bump, you know. I can't get off without that. I need it. And so, yeah, it's like that safety net. It's much better to work without the safety net because it's much more exciting, you know, for the audience because, you know, they go. And that's why, like, Thank God You're Here worked. You know, when I did that show, people would approach me. You know, the most common question I was asked? Can you guess?
Yeah, it would be like, is it actually improv?
Exactly, right? So every single person would come and go, "Oh, you must know. Did you know?" And they really worked hard at sort of concealing. Like you couldn't even, like when you were backstage, you couldn't even look at the set. They wouldn't allow you to look at the set, just so you don't get any. So you get that really surprised look when you first walk in, and you can't fake that, you know. And that was the reason it worked. Was not that it was tight and there was laughs every second. The things that made it really interesting was the bits where it didn't work.
Yes.
You know
And
the
then how you
flat
get
bits.
out of it, and then what
Yeah,
happens next. It's
it
exciting.
became exciting. It became like watching a performer without a safety net because they could fall and die, and that's exciting for the, you know. It's yeah.
Also on that, because you almost didn't do it, isn't it also really exciting to see how like quick-witted you were and how well you did? And I know we said how your career blew up from that, but also just from a confidence side to go, oh, I'm quick thinking, and maybe you could apply it more to stand up. I don't know if that helped or
Yeah,
helped with the
no.
confidence.
Well, when I started in Sydney as a stand-up, I used a lot of improv because I had to, you know, like I was saying earlier, you did the really rough gigs, really rough, and sometimes the TV where people would be watching the footy in one corner of the room, and others that you can hear the poker machines going. And so sometimes, a lot of the times, the material just didn't work because they couldn't follow a thought. So you had to resort to talking to the audience. So that's what I mean. Like the Sydney comedians tend to be better at that banter, at that, just staying on your toes and being spontaneous and having to drop the bits you planned quickly. Otherwise, you didn't survive the gig. You see?
But also something you did, which is really interesting on top of that, is that you kind of changed a bit of your style early on. I think it was from maybe Jamoan, where, doing all those rough gigs, in your words, you said they were really crass and a lot of swearing. And
Yeah.
you realized that you could kind of, transform your comedy by shifting away from that. Do you remember that? Can you tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, look, there was a few turning points. I don't know if you know this, you've done a lot of research, which is very impressive. But when I first started, I was the only ethnic comedian in the whole of Australia that I, as far as I was aware.
Yep.
In Sydney, definitely. There was Vince Sorrenti, but he was kind of born in Australia. Very, I don't know if you know Vince. Anyway, but he was Italian, right? But I was the only brown-skinned ethnic comedian in the country, and I was really nervous about that. I was very insecure about it. And so when I first started, I changed my name to Peter. So I thought, oh, Peter, and I did it subconsciously. I used to go and write your name, and the woman who was managing the comedy store would pick the people who would go on the open mic, and everyone would be nervous. And we were like, I was 22 or something, and then I missed out for 2 weeks in a row. And then finally she said, "Oh yeah, I can give you a 5-minute spot." She said, "What's your name?" I said, "Akmal Saleh." She goes, "What?" I said, "Peter." She goes, "Peter, okay, that's easier."
They're not even remotely close.
And I did.
as well.
I know, but I must have taken it subconsciously because at the time there was like 7 Peters doing comedy.
Yep.
There's a lot of Peters, and I thought, oh, that's what it is. Like my subconscious brain went into that, and so I was Peter for a couple of years until I realized it was actually to my advantage to talk about things like being from Egypt and being an Arab, and then September 11 happened, and it was really bad, but it was good for my career. There's always a positive side to everything, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Because I suddenly I had I had all these jokes that I could do that no one else could do. Like I was saying, like I had a joke about, so imagine being an Arab American who genuinely wants his pilot's license. Fat chance. Not today, Mustafa. I had all this treasure trove of jokes that no one else can touch. And being an Arab Islamic fundamentalist, like I'm not Islamic, but I was doing all these jokes, and suddenly I was really I was noticed because of that, and so the problem with that was I started to get mostly ethnic crowds who wanted me to do that, right? So I would do that, and they would go off, and then just organically I just stopped doing that, and those audiences left. So those audiences who were there for those jokes specifically just they weren't interested in what I was saying. And just gradually over the years, my audiences are, I would say, predominantly Anglo now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it's hard to know. I can't do a blood test with every member of the audience, but lick this. No, I'm getting like a sort of a lot of white people that I never got before in my first phase of doing the Arab material or whatever. I kind of naturally started to avoid that without giving too much thought to it.
Yeah,
I just
it's
did
just
it.
the growth of a comedian.
Just organically happens,
Yeah. That's really awesome. And also back on the Peter thing, 2 things. One, that lady, what a moron. Akmal Saleh doesn't sound anything like Peter. It's not even like
it's very different, spelled completely differently. No, yeah.
And then my second point is, what a wonderful lesson. And I'm sure you dealt with a lot of crap growing up as well. And then to change back, moving back from Peter to Akmal, that's pretty exciting, realizing that you could thrive as you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more on that? Because that's really interesting.
Absolutely. It was far more satisfying, when people met you in the street and went, "Hey, Akmal, I saw your show the other night. Well done. That was really funny." It felt far more satisfying than Peter. And I could also just subconsciously, without realizing, when you use your real name, you show more of yourself.
Yeah.
So I was like early on, and this is common for all comedians starting, they built a character, to protect themselves. So they either, they imitate someone, or they become, they're not themselves. And as their confidence grows and as their skills improve, they show more of them, of who they are.
Yeah.
But and using your real name is a big thing, I think, for me anyway. It just felt more authentic, and I could be more authentic with the audience. I could be myself, warts and all, with all the bad and the good. I was speaking as myself more, and it opened up a whole lot of material that wasn't available to me.
It's such a nice transition. You spoke about the growth of how like different audiences, I briefly mentioned Jamoan and how you've had a shift there. Because that could also be scary where you're in the one lane. You said you were doing like inverted commas, like the terrorist jokes. And you could be like, no, I have to do these because I'm losing my audience. But no, you just naturally, evolved, if that's the right word. And you just, you found a new audience, because it can be scary. Like a lot of musicians, I know you're big into music and you obviously play guitar, where sometimes when they go in a different lane, they can be so scared that no one's going to see them. But it sounds like you've just kind of honored your craft and you've allowed for the authenticity and you've reaped the rewards.
Yeah, but it's funny, I didn't do it consciously. If I had to think about it too much, I probably would have been too scared to lose that audience, and I would have stuck to those jokes forever. But because I'm a bit vague and a bit, the ADHD thing can be a real positive, like everyone's got it now. Everyone's got ADHD.
I don't know anyone that doesn't.
Well, it's another words for it is creativity. If you're creative, you're going to be, you're not going to be able to focus on one thing. You're going to daydream. You're going to be impulsive occasionally. And if that's ADHD, then anyone who's creative has probably got it. And what was the point I was making then? Yeah, so, when I did change the material, I didn't do it by saying I'm going to make a big change in my career consciously. It just evolved really slowly, without me giving it too much thought,
I think that's even more of a positive, is that you're probably just focusing on the positives, and naturally that came. You weren't necessarily focusing on the negatives, because if you were focusing more on the negatives, then you would have asked yourself potentially those questions and come from fear.
Yeah.
Not just someone like loving what they're doing.
Yeah, I love what I do, regardless of, I'd much, and I've said this to my agency, because they don't understand that. And I said, I'd much rather do a really nice, well set up gig and make half the money than make double the money in a horrible setting where the sound's terrible or the audience is drunk or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd much rather forego the financial rewards for a better show. And I've always had that.
I'm sure your agents hate you for that, but you've given them a good run, so they can't complain.
Yeah.
Also,
No, well, they got a different focus. They're a business, and they understand things from a business point of view. But for the many years, I've tried to explain. Look, I'd much rather do half the audience who want to be there, than double my audience, make double the money with half the audience not wanting to be there, or they're not interested, or the setting's not good, or whatever.
Yeah, that's someone that loves their craft, and I feel that as well. And this might be a topic for another time, because I know it's quite in depth, but I think it, flows quite nicely to what you said. Talking about the money side, often when we in life just chase money for the sake of it, and you've got a lot of great learnings. I believe that you're on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and you did like Selling Houses Australia.
Yeah.
There's quite a story there, but I'd love to know kind of what the takeaways were from doing those shows.
The takeaways were, they've asked me twice previously to do it, and I said no, I'm an artist, I don't do that. until we ran into some serious financial problems where I'm vague, and so's my wife. We're both very vague, and we had an accountant who ended up being a cocaine addict.
I didn't know that he was a cocaine addict.
Yeah, he was a cocaine addict, right? We didn't realize that it was and he forgot to put in our tax for 3 years in a row. Right, we did, and we're idiots too, because we should have checked on that. We didn't realize, and so, and we're really bad with money, so we didn't even have the money to pay the fines for not putting in the tax. You're an accountant, right? You would appreciate.
It's pretty
this.
bad. I didn't last very long, but
Well, 3 years, man, and we as I said, we didn't even have enough money to pay the fines, let alone the actual tax.
Yeah.
And then they offered me this show for the third time, and I'm an idiot, right? Because I hadn't watched the show properly.
Yeah.
And I said, how much are they paying? They were paying $60,000 a week. And
What?
that's the minimum wage. Yeah, that was the smallest, like the minimum. I could have got more. I realized later, and so they wanted, and I got there, and I had not watched the show properly. I just did it. I thought, it's one of those Survivor type shows. I could do that.
Yeah.
And I got there, and I'm in South Africa, and suddenly they wanted to submerge me in this like fish guts and scorpions, and I went, what? And I completely freaked out. I said, I'm not doing that. And then the idea was, if you say I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, they can let you go. But this was the first day, and I said, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And the head of the network came out of the bushes and went, no, you're not doing that. No, you're not gonna. We just paid for your business class airfare and we gave you money. No, you're not leaving. And so I was in a situation where I was really uncomfortable, but it was an experience. And I got to meet Shane Warne,
Yes.
who had constipation.
I heard that you had a great conversation that you with one of the great Australian greats, and you speaking to him for quite a few minutes about how constipated he is. You're living the dream.
Oh, it's fantastic. But what a surreal moment.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking, when was this ever likely? Where the spin king, Shane Warne, is talking to me in South Africa about his bowel movements. It was just so unlikely,
Yeah. And I'm curious because I don't think I'd love to do a show like that. $60,000 is a lot of money. Obviously, it's
That was
so
the
stressful.
minimum. Shane Warne was getting 2 million.
No.
He
How
was
much money do they make? Because there's probably over 10 of you, and you're getting all that money, and then plus living on.
Not just that. There's something like there's a staff, a crew of about 80 who travel from Australia to South Africa. I don't know where they get their money from. I'd like to find out. Maybe you should do a podcast on that.
I think I should. I'm just surprised they even made more than $2 million.
Well, no, they paid him 2 million. I was talking to him once, and it's just like, it's all about perspective, isn't it? It's all relative. So he was talking about, it's so sad that he died so young. I don't know, but I really got on really well with him. And I was another person I was really starstruck by initially. And he's going, I shouldn't have done this. This is horrible, whatever. It was really, because it's really horrible. Yeah. And I said, I just think about the money. You're making fair amount of money. And he goes, man, $2 million. Before I left, I was offered $2 million to do an ad online. So I didn't even have to go to TV, and it would have taken a day to shoot. But I said, I'll do this because I wanted to do it for my kids. So, 2 million sounds like a lot, but it depends who you are.
Exactly. And 60,000 is a lot of money, especially for where you're at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously the show is very uncomfortable. You said you didn't necessarily do your research, but do you look back at that experience and go like, thank God I could, pay off some of that debt, all the debt.
I paid it all.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I paid it all, and it was an experience I can look back on. Saying when I'm really old and I'm in a nursing home and I'm telling people, Shane Warne was talking about his constipation, they would have just upped my meds. He's talking about South Africa again.
Shane Warne in the room with us right now.
Yes, hello Shane.
Oh, amazing. I'm jealous of you that you had that experience with Shane Warne, and I'm glad that you could get some positives out of it. And I still can't get my head over the fact that there was that type of money involved. But anyway,
and I was getting the minimum as well.
Did you go? I don't know who was on with you. Do you go around and find out what everyone else going? Like, that guy's getting 10 grand more than me. I can't believe
it. No, because you're in close proximity with everybody. It's really enclosed, and you're there. I was there for like 18 or 19 days.
Yeah.
So you get to talk to people, and they open up. And I was with Brendan Favola.
Oh yeah.
Do you know him? Yeah. So he was a great guy. But then we talked about money, and he said, "Oh, is that all you got?" Yeah, that's what they offered me initially, and then I negotiated another 15 grand a week.
Wow.
So I thought, oh, that's all, you know. But he's, yeah,
That's how it is. And then this is just, how do you kind of see the Australian comedy landscape? Because we don't really have shows quite like that anymore. And, you know, you've mentioned, thank God you're here. You've done heaps of stuff. You've been in TV shows. You've been here for the golden age. What's
yeah.
kind of your perspective on it now?
You mean stand up or television?
Television, that side of the
Yeah,
comedy.
look, I think comedy is the most difficult thing to do well. That's why you don't see a lot of really good comedy films. They're foreign, you know, just every 10 years or more, you might have one or two. You go, wow, that's a really funny film. Funny is hard to do. It's hard to do. And the problem is also, in my experience, like you might have something, you might have a team of writers who've worked well together, and they'll come in, and producers will come in and ruin it. They'll come in and go, no, this is how it's going to be done. This is wrong. And they have no real experience, and they haven't worked with that team. So this team know their timing, they know their rhythm, they know their humor. And so you get people in Australia, I find that the producers do that because they have to justify their wages. So they come in and meddle with it, and it's never as good as it could have been, you know. I think that's, you know, I've been working with these guys, Superwog. You see Superwog?
Yes, they
So-
love them. Yeah.
So I was a script editor on the latest. They're on Netflix. They got a Netflix special, and they're getting like it's very politically incorrect, but it's funny. There's a real truth behind it. There's a real genuine, and I know those guys because I grew up with them. Well, they grew up with me. Really, they just very young, but I knew their parents were, you know, in the Egyptian community.
Oh, I didn't know they were Egyptian.
They're Egyptian, yeah. And the dad, I know the dad really well. So the dad, the way they portray him is very close to that. Like, you'd be surprised how similar he is. And so they're really funny guys who are given a lot of opportunity to show their stuff, and it's good. They haven't been inhibited like, you know, with so many other comedians. So and the result speaks for itself. They're getting like ridiculous, like a sketch they did got 50 million views. 50 million. Yeah, check it out on YouTube.
I want
So
them
if
on
you
the
go-
podcast. I don't know how to contact them, but
I'll give you the details if you
Oh,
want.
thank
Yeah.
you. They've inspired,
Yeah.
just like going back to what you're saying, because I do screenwriting. I've got quite a few scripts as well, and they've inspired me to show that you can do that type of comedy and you can
Yeah,
thrive.
yeah. Well,
they're an
I
inspiration.
like they're friends of the family, so I remember them as little kids, and you know they were always interested in comedy, and whenever I went to visit, they'd come and talk to me about comedy, and that's all they wanted to talk about. They're obsessed by it, and so that's really fresh. I mean, there's a guy called Sam Campbell.
Yes.
Now I think he's the new wave. You know, he makes me feel very old because it's so fresh and so unique and so out there. And he's huge at the moment. And I think, you know, it's great. Look, you know, when I was starting out, someone like him would have been rejected and just would have died because the community, you know, they weren't ready for that kind of humor. You know, when I was doing stand up, a lot of the comedians were doing like homophobic, misogynist, racist jokes and getting away with it openly, right? And as time went on, it evolved into something a bit more sophisticated, a bit more interesting, a bit more intelligent. And so it's Sam Campbell now. It's the right time for him. Where if he'd grown up in the '90s, I don't think he would have got much attention.
Yeah, he's from what I've seen, he's so unique and so he's got a very distinctive style of humor. I love that.
Yeah,
Also
but what I'm
kinda
saying
like-
is, he wouldn't have been accepted. It was just the wrong time. Where now, the spectrum is really wide. It's much wider than it used to be, right?
Yeah.
So you get people from Hannah Gatsby to Sam Campbell to, you know, more traditional stand-up. It's a much wider spectrum where it was really closed before.
I love that because it shows that you can thrive in different areas. Like
Yeah.
Sam might not be for everyone, but he's found his audience. I
Oh,
love
it's
it. And
huge though. He's
yeah,
huge.
yeah, he's very,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's one of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
top. And then also, I think you've also had I'm glad that you got to work with the Superwog boys. That's so
Yeah.
cool. You've also been involved in a number of like TV show stuff along the way. But how do you deal with like the BS side? Long story short, I had a TV developmental deal in America. I was going to move to America. I thought I'd be on Netflix. I was projecting a bit. Thought I was going
Yeah.
to get a few seasons. I'm going to be the big writer. But then in Australia, I'm sure they've offered you or you should do this show or pitch me something, and then you think it's going to get made and it doesn't get made. Have you had many experiences like that or a lot
Yeah.
of meetings that don't go anywhere?
Yeah, look, as I said, I think the people in charge, the executives, are sort of a hindrance to creativity. They're kind of like, because they make the decision without giving you, like someone like yourself, for example, they had no idea by reading the script. They had no idea because they're not creative people.
Yeah.
You know, if they had any brains and they were really interested in developing talent, they would have got you and said, okay, here's some cameras, do some things. We want to encourage you to do it. You know, we don't get it ourselves, but maybe there's an audience out there. Instead of saying, I don't find this funny, or I don't like this, you know, this is not good. It's the arrogance of it all. You know, they have no real idea whether it would work or not, but they have to make an executive decision, and it's usually the wrong decision because they're in that position. They get these jobs because they're not creative. If they were creative, they wouldn't want these jobs. And so they're the ones who control the money, they control the budget, and they generally. My advice to you is don't send a written script. Maybe just a sort of treatment, very quick, very sort of refined, and then film something because they're not. They can't. They don't have visual brains like we do. Right. So if you film something and make it the best of your ability, send that has far more effect than sending something in script form.
I agree. It's good
They're
advice.
more likely to look at it too.
I was very lucky with that. Well, lucky is anyway, part of that production company. They were actors as well and they got it. And I'd won an award. So I piggybacked off that. But with my other scripts, that's exactly what I'm going to do because it's very hard for someone who's not in that space to see a script, understand the tone, the style, everything. It's just words.
Yeah,
I think that's really important advice. Is even just short little skits as well can go very
yeah. It's
far.
a
I think that's what
visual
Superwog
medium.
did. I think Superwog did something like that. Didn't they just film a little bit and then they blew up from?
Well, no, Superwog started just really basic. They had a little tiny, a lot of the stuff was filmed on their like camcorder or their phone at home when they were young, and it just went off. It just went crazy online, and so they were approached by the ABC because they were getting such huge numbers, and they said, "Do you want to do a pilot?" And they made a pilot, and then the pilot led to a season, and then that season was so successful that I think if they'd sent a script in and they hadn't done the YouTube stuff, if they just sent a script, they would have read it and go, what? There's no way we'd do this. There's no way. This would be so offensive, and and it doesn't even join up, and the characters are the same people, and this is all wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you read it, it wouldn't make any sense. And so they were they evolved gradually, and they've proved themselves. And this is a time now that I didn't have that privilege when I was your age. You've got a TV studio in your pocket, pretty much. You could film it. It doesn't even have to be professionally filmed. If the material is good, if the performances are good, it'll get a reaction, and you can bypass the production companies and just put it out there. If you put something once a week, if you put something out there, if it's good, it will get noticed. And if it gets noticed, the producers will go, oh, these people seem to like it. It must be good. We don't know why. I don't find it funny, but a lot of people do. Maybe we should, commission a show because it's all about money for them. It's not about creative control or anything else.
I agree. It's a very exciting time, and you've inspired me. I've been speaking to people about filming some of my stuff, so that was the universe speaking through you to me. So I appreciate it.
Yes.
Before we do a rapid fire segment, you've got a new show coming out, and you're touring around Australia. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Well, the show that I've got now, it's, unlike other comedians, like say, Aj Barker will write a show and it's really scripted and it's word for word and it's called that and it's about that. I've never done that. I've never had the discipline to be able to do that. So basically my stand-up is I do the hour and then I drop stuff that's old and I replace it with new stuff and it gradually becomes a new show. So this show at the moment, it's got a, sort of I guess if it's about anything, it's about scams. It's about people being scammed and all it's variations of being scammed, from religion to, I talk about crystals. I live in the Byron Bay area, near Byron Bay. So all my friends are into the healing power of crystals and Reiki. And I talk about that. And I talk about growing up as a Christian because I grew up in a hardcore Christian family. Yeah, and I talk about the Middle East a little bit, about what's happening in the Middle East a little bit, not too much because I know people, they don't come to comedy shows I try, that's the other thing, I've always been really careful not to get up and preach, or to, I always say, look, I don't know anything, but this is what it seems like to me. It seems a bit crazy, but I try to be conscious of that because I don't like that in other comedians when they go, this is how it's going to be. This is what it's about. Same. Listen to me. You got to make it funny first, and then maybe
leeway to be like, I'm not attacking you. This is what I think, but you know what I mean? When a comedian's like, this is how it has to be. It can be quite divisive. You want someone, even if you don't agree with all of the takes, you want someone like you who's fluid, here's what I'm thinking. And it's way more welcoming. And I've seen
I might be wrong. I don't know. I'm ignorant. I still don't know what there are exceptions to that. There's George Carlin. I mean, if you're going to be that, you're going to have to make the material really good. If you're going to preach, you want to back it up with beautifully written, strong material. He's an exception to the rule, I think.
Agreed. I'm very excited for your shows. I love the scam side, and I know we didn't dive into it with your family and your upbringing, but just a few examples of how we'll talk about this another time, but how when you were marrying your wife, the church leader was had a meeting with you and was like, why did you marry an Egyptian girl? Or one of the people spat in your mouth, and I think they were very controlling with the money. And these are just small little snippets, so it'd be very interesting for people as well.
God talk about Jesus's love and acceptance. He just said, I want to see you, but don't bring your wife. Don't bring your fiance. And then said, well, why can't you find an Egyptian girl? Egyptian girls don't wear revealing clothes and they don't smoke cigarettes. What? All of them? How do you know that? Can you prove that? It's just, that's the thing that I found religion is it mostly promotes division and hatred instead of what it's meant to promote. And in my experience, it was very negative,
Do you have a book? What's it called? And if I can find it, I'll put it in the episode notes because I think you talk about that in the book as well.
I talk about it. Look, the book, again, is one of those things that just kind of happened. They just asked me to do it and I rushed it. If I could have another chance, I would rewrite it and I would write it well because they were pushing me. It was the year I left the radio and I moved to this area. And my mum had just passed away, and it was all this stuff going on. And they gave me this advance. They just came out of nowhere, and they said, "We'd like you to write, like a biography." And I thought, at first, I thought maybe they've got me confused with Nelson Mandela or someone. Maybe they think I'm someone else. I thought, what do you want in my life? But they gave me the money, and I it's like an idiot. I spent the money and just didn't write the book. I forgot about it, right? And I was in WA somewhere months later, and I get a call from Random House who gave me the money, and they said, "Oh, we just want to know how the book's going." And I said, "What book? What are you talking about?" They go, "We gave you that money. We're gonna have to take it back." And I said, "Oh God." And so I regret having to rush it because I rushed it and I wrote it and they went, oh, this is good. This is good. This is good. We like the way it is. And I think if you're listening, Random House, I would love another go at rewriting it from scratch and up because I would write it properly and I would make it funnier and, it could have been more thoughtful. So I'm not really particularly happy about the book, but there's a lot of stories there that are all true. They're all true, but they could have been written in a better way.
I like that. I'm sure it was still great, but the artist in you is about expanding and growth. You're like, oh, I could have done this bit. Or I could have
I wish I could do it again. I think I could do a much better job because I'm a lot more settled now too. Like I was just rushing it, you should never rush because everything comes in time. If I just said, no, I'll give you the advance back and I'll take my time.
Yeah.
It would have been a much better product, I think.
Email them and say, let's do like a part 2 and
Yeah,
expand.
you again. Fuck, we lost a lot of money through you. Fuck off.
Cool. And I'll put in the episode notes your tour. What's it called? I know you said I know they've all got names. And
Well, I'm doing Melbourne. It's just called Akmal because I
That's
just thought of
great.
it. It's just
I'll tell you why that's great, because you're at the top of the search. I always thought I would name like if I was to do a show like A or B or CCC,
Yeah,
because then you're at the
yeah.
very top. Whereas if you're like Will Anderson, who's obviously doing really well, if he shows Will Anderson, it's at the very end of the search engine, so it's harder to get people
That's
to
a
see your
good
shows.
point. No, I haven't not thought about that. But also, when you call it Akmal, it's not. And you can change it. You can talk about anything. You can change the material. If you come up with an idea, you can start it differently. You can finish it differently. You've got a lot more leverage.
I think that's much better, especially for your comedy style. It means you're not stuck in a box. You can do what you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. You're not
Often-
doing a show about bicycles or my trip to India or whatever. There's a lot of that.
Well, a lot of comedians have told me because you sometimes when you go to the Melbourne Comedy Festival, when you submit your show, you have to give it a name, and you don't even know what the show's about by that stage.
Yeah,
And you're like,
yeah.
fuck, I have to bring in this topic because it's called that.
Yeah,
That's
well, they
fine.
always pressure me to come up with a name, and so I had I called it. It's not my because I said, look, I can't. You got to come up with a name. We've got a week to go before you go. In. I said, well, it's not my fault, and they said, well, look, let's call it that. It's not my fault. And so for the next month, people go, so what's not your fault? You don't really talk about that. Saying, I don't know, it's just a name. Don't think too much about it.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I reckon to wrap up the podcast, we'll do a rapid fire segment. You've answered most of these, so I'll start with. You did a doco, and I think you said it was it was the thing you're most proud of. Can you tell me a little bit about it and why you did it?
So it's not comedy. It started off because I grew up in Australia. I kind of was born in Egypt, but I didn't really have an idea of how tough things were, and how freedom of speech is inhibited and how scary it could be or whatever. And I meant to do it as a comedy because this was after there was a revolution. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
There was the Arab Spring, where the people rose up against this brutal dictator. But they filled the streets with like 5 million people in the streets wanting him to be removed. Prior to that, if you said a word against the president, you would just be taken away by the secret police and disappear forever. And so I was inspired by that, and I went to Egypt, and I wanted to make it funny, but the stories were so horrific that I just couldn't, I thought it'd be disrespectful to the people and the cause. It was all young people, like 22, 23. They used Facebook and Twitter when it was Twitter to organize, and it's a really inspirational story about how people can get together, and they got together, and they were like Muslims and Christians and men and women, the poor, the really poor and the really wealthy, all came into the one square. Held hands and said, we want this guy to go. We're not afraid. And they were shooting at them. They were shooting them in the eyes, like just to make them blind so they can live but tell the tale that I was shot in the eye. But when they did that, more people went to the streets, like it just was so inspirational. And until he finally left, it was like 18 days of protests. And the media was against them. So the media is owned by the government. So the media is saying they wouldn't show that there was a big crowd. They would just show a tiny little. But social media was the savior. Because before social media, they could just lie. but because everyone's got a camera in their pocket, they filmed it and then they turned off the internet. It still didn't work. That actually increased because people they couldn't get the internet. They didn't know what was going on. So they went to the streets and the crowds doubled. I'm going on about it, but
No. I saw it. I loved it.
It took me a long time to make it, but it's probably the thing I'm most proud of. Yeah, but no one watched. Like Superwog got 50 million views. I got like 1,000, 1,000 views.
I'll put it in the episode notes so people can check it out. I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed it.
Oh, you watched it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that was the thing, like anything's possible if people get together with the right cause and the right attitude. Anything's possible.
It was a great message. This is going to get you in trouble. Who's the best comedian in Australia and your favorite comedian of all time?
My favorite comedian, he retired recently, Scott Morrison. I found him he made me laugh more than any other comedian. I mean, that's what I laugh at these days is people like that, like Trump. I mean, how could you top? People say I can't make Trump funny because he's doing the material himself. He's hilarious. But look, I looked up to people when I was growing up. It was Richard Pryor, George Carlin, very different, but very different styles. Stephen Wright, have you Stephen Wright? He's a brilliant, genius comedian, like incredible one-liners. And then I loved the Monty Python guys. I mean, as an ensemble, it's just unmatched to this day. Like when you watch The Life of Brian, it's just I mean that's a kind of film that just doesn't happen very often. Just every 2-3 generations you'll get something that brilliant. So those people I grew up admiring. Ross Noble is the guy, out of the people working now, I find him very inspirational because I learn a lot from him by, being confident, backing myself and allowing, your natural rhythm to play out. That takes a lot of courage.
Do you have a philosophy on life you follow?
A philosophy on life. Lately, I've been having a philosophy that a lot of people disagree with. And that is, I don't think anyone has any choice in anything. I think
free will.
Huh?
Free will?
I don't believe in free will. And the more I look at it, the more I'm convinced. And maybe because I don't have a choice but to think like that. I don't know. But and I'm convinced. And when I really decided that was the case, when my brother had 2 daughters, he had 2 girls. And they grew up in the same family, right? But they're very different. One is an introvert, the other is an extrovert. One is creative, the other one's very mathematical and very focused. One is very sociable, the other one doesn't like people, And they're babies, they're little kids, like 5 and 8 or whatever. They didn't choose that. And then they got their upbringing that's developing that they have no choice in. So you got your genes that's predetermined, and you got your upbringing. You had no choice in either. So by the time you get to a certain age, every decision you make from that point on is already been predetermined. I know people hate hearing this because they go, no, that's bullshit. I've got free will. No, you don't. And so once you're convinced of that, you don't get upset at people being dickheads or someone who offends you or whatever. You go, he's just, he's following his path. You just avoid them, and you also don't blame yourself for all the wrongs you've done, all the bad things. You take responsibility, but you go, well, this is due to my upbringing and my genes. So there you go.
Interesting.
I know you were looking for a funny answer.
No,
but this is what I believe, right?
I have no attachments to what you say. We'll
no,
probably you go on.
Yeah. So I think that's I think that's true. The older I get, the more I observe people and the way they behave, the more I'm convinced that it's all predestined.
I'll have to pick your brains another time, but I have one question on that because I think that's very interesting. What about when you have, sometimes when you're angry and you can choose to be angry in that moment, or you go, I'm not going to be angry. What about that choice? Or when you do
you don't choose. You don't choose. If you end up being angry, you're always going to choose that. It's not a choice. I'll tell you something that you can look at if you have any doubts. There's been these really well documented scientific experiments, and it's many people have done it since, right? Where they've hooked up your brains to sort of to monitor your brain waves and the way you behave, and you've got a button like a green button and a red button, and when you see a picture, you press, and the people monitoring can tell which before you are consciously aware
What you got?
of the decision. They are up to 10 seconds. 10 seconds was the longest. So 10 seconds, they go, oh, he's going to pick red, and then before you're actually conscious of doing it. And that's scientifically documented. Check it out. There's a guy called Sam Harris.
Yep.
You know Sam Harris? So he's written a really short book on free will, and it's pretty convincing argument, pretty compelling. I think so. The fact that you choose is an illusion.
I would love to be a fly in the wall with some of the people you live with or near in Byron on their takes as well, but we'll talk about
Well,
that
yeah.
another time.
So they're very open-minded. They're all conspiracy theorists, and when the COVID thing was hitting, and I had to get the vaccine. They go, don't get the vaccine, mate. Don't get it. It's a scam. They're gonna inject you with the 5G network, whatever that means. So they're all very open-minded to different philosophies, ideas, and beliefs.
I want to be a fly in the wall with the two clashes in philosophies. That'd be great. Last two. Oh, if you could go back into time when you were a cab driver, what would you say to yourself and why?
When I was a cab driver, I'd say, well, stop being a cab driver. Do comedy, because you're probably going to enjoy that more. It's so funny. Like, I used to work for 12 hours and I would make like $60, $70 cash. This is before GST or whatever. So it was tax free. Yeah. And I'd get the money. And then the first gig I did was 15 minutes at the Comedy Store, 15 minutes. And I got something like $80 cash. And I thought, man, I work 12 hours and I don't make that much. And I just got paid $80 to do something that I was glad to do for free anyway. I thought, yeah, I want more of this. I don't want to be a taxi driver. I love the taxi driving. I just hate it when people got in the cab. That was because suddenly it was all about them.
Yeah. What jokes? What advice would you give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
I would say you're going to die in a few years. It's not long. It's not a long life. You won't even exist. And everyone you know won't exist. So why worry about it? Why don't you just take the risk now and enjoy your life, make the most of it? Because in 50 years, everyone you know will not exist anymore. If you contemplate that, you don't give things too much importance. You say, okay, if I do this and I fail, so what? I'm not even going to be here. And so I'm here now, I can not do it, or I could do it and fuck up, but that's okay. At least I say I gave it a go, but you will never know if you don't do it. You see, it's much easier to not do anything, but is that how you want to live your life? What's left of it? And you don't know how much life you got left. No one can really predict. You don't know.
Good advice. Last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What's the one question I should have asked you?
The one question that you should have asked me is, why aren't you writing jokes right now? You should be working. You're very lazy. Why are you so lazy? Would have been a very fair question. Why are you so easily distracted by bullshit?
What's your jeez, I choked on that. What's your answer to that?
My answer to that is because I don't have a choice. You see, it's genetically predetermined that I'm lazy or I get distracted, or it's to do with my upbringing and my genes. I think it's a cop out. I know people listening to this. I've talked to a lot of people like, you're just copping out. But I think there's some truth to it. But I wish I was a little bit more focused, a little bit more disciplined, because I think I would do a lot more. I'd be more productive. And I think, It doesn't matter how good you think you are if you're not proving it, if you're not producing, if you're not active, then it doesn't matter what potential you have. There might be some brilliant musicians out there who are better than the greatest musician that ever lived, but if they're not doing it, if they're not actually focused on doing it, then we'll never find out.
And before we go, how can people follow you and keep up to date with you?
Well, they can Facebook and Instagram and the usual social media stuff. But just look out for my head. If you see my head on a poster, take it, and because it'll scare the kids. No. Look, I don't know. It's I'm just kind of I'm around. I'm around in the comedy festival. I'm doing the Athenaeum Theatre, which is a lovely space. Looking forward to that. I love being in one place for an extended period of time because you're not traveling. It does your head in, like doing a different gig every night, different hotel rooms, different venue. To do the same place is very settling, and you get into a rhythm. It's a lot easier. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. We'll put all of that in the episode notes below so people check it out. Thank you so much. I love you've got a very unique outlook on life and you're very empowering. And I love that your enthusiasm of comedy still radiates through. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, man. It's a real pleasure to talk to you.
I love how Akmal talks about how he changed his comedy name back from Peter to Akmal. Yes, obviously there were reasons for the original name change, but I love how Akmal decided to embrace his genuine self, his heritage, and his life. He realized that by being himself, he could offer a lot more. He acknowledges that he was able to stand out by simply being authentic. Sometimes this can be challenging and scary because we may think it's easier to blend into the crowd, but Akmal is a reminder that you shine best by being you. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. The closer we get to being who we're meant to be, the brighter we shine. Unknown.
Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.